So what happens now? That's what I've been trying to assess this week in Tehran, talking to the friends and enemies of Ayatollah Khomeini and experiencing at first hand just how bloody the situation could become. Ayatollah Khomeini returns to a country teetering on the brink of civil war. For the last 7 days, Tehran and other cities have seen violent clashes between troops and demonstrators demanding Khomeini's return. And this week, the crowds have shown that they are ready to fight back, pelting the soldiers with rocks and homemade petrol bombs. Inevitably, the result is massacre. Even though their commander-in-chief, the Shah, is gone, much of the army is still ready to patrol the streets. Day after day this week, the demonstrators massed and went forward. The troops answer their taunts with bullets. As the clashes erupt, calls from eyewitnesses flood into the newspaper offices of Tehran, newly freed from censorship. Journalists like Raji Sangabadi try to piece together how the killings happened and, above all, why.
I thought probably an arrangement had been made behind the scenes to get a kind of peaceful formula for a change in the system, in the regime. But now, as we've just heard, there are widespread reports of great killings. Our own reporters have been at the scene right down there in the Shah Reza Avenue, where it is reputed more than 200 people have been shot, many of them killed and wounded, seriously wounded. To me, it sounds like we are going implacably toward the disastrous climax of a violent, armed revolution.
That was 4 days ago. Since then, the man under greatest pressure has been Iran's new Prime Minister, Dr. Shapur Bakhtiar. Once the leader of the opposition, he now heads the caretaker government left in place by the Shah and is forced to defend and perhaps even order the killings in the streets. The key decision, should he allow Khomeini to come back? In the end, he announced that Khomeini could return, but warned that he, Bakhtiar, would stay in power. Khomeini himself will now join the group of priests that has been the backbone of his movement in Iran. For weeks, they have passed on his orders, interpreted his sphinx-like statements, and kept in touch with him, not through Allah, but the telephone. Ayatollah Beheshti could be a member of Khomeini's Islamic Council, which will challenge the Bakhtiar government. He believes that Khomeini is the man to rescue Iran.
In every society, when the people feels that a change, a very strong change is necessary, and they find a man, a religious man, who calls for such change and who tries to lead a movement towards such aims, they will accept him. In England too, in Germany too, in America too. I have found a great number of the Western people waiting for a new change in their life too. They aren't sufficient with the life of today. Aren't they sufficient or not?
Beheshti is one of the men who has built and sustained the Iranian Revolution, a respected theologian who in just a few months has become a powerful mass leader. This week, his followers were on the streets again to demand Khomeini's return. But in spite of the tidal wave behind Khomeini, there are still powerful forces that oppose them. A close friend of the royal family takes off in an army helicopter. From it, he'll observe the marches and then report by telephone to the Shah in Morocco. While many other monarchists have fled the country, Hossein Amir Sadihi is still fighting for the king.
I try to keep away from the streets as possible, but it's very difficult to take.
The sight of Khomeini's followers fills him with nothing but contempt.
A lot of complexes are coming out. A lot of the darkest side of the Iranian personality are showing themselves. I fear that it is running out of control, and the process of radicalization is far beyond anybody's control to stop, even Khomeini's. I think if Khomeini were to stop in his tracks now and say, all right, this is the end, stop, and let's get a moderate solution, I think he would himself be bypassed very quickly. So it really has no leadership. This is why the regime has not been able to tackle a dialogue with them, because there are no single elements who will be answerable to the masses.
They leave about late spring for Saadabad.
Even with Khomeini coming back, Amir Sadihi tries to keep the flame of monarchy alive. Inside the Shah's palace at Niavaran, he gives the press a guided tour of the treasures of 2,500 years of kingship. Everything, he says, is ready for the Shah's eventual return.
He had a dream for this nation, and he pulled it by its bootstraps out. Now that dream is pretty well shattered, because the people have discarded their boots.
These empty rooms were the center of absolute power in Iran. Amir Sadihi himself is a symbol of how that power could make or break. Son of the Shah's personal chauffeur, he was sent to England for an expensive private education that turned him into a fully fledged member of the royal court.
Loyalty to me is to continue to serve the cause, whatever the consequences. Unfortunately, this is not very commonplace. Unfortunately, we see those who were there and those who had, made themselves so rich and powerful were the first to disappear when the whiff of grape shot came across their faces. But to me, it is a cause, it is a loyalty far superior to any other. And of course, if you do not believe strongly enough in a certain thing, you obviously really cannot hope to achieve. And I intend to achieve.
But many more are equally determined that the old days will never come back. In the ravaged center of Tehran this week, journalist Raji Samgabadi visits a different kind of memorial to the Shah's 26 years in power. Sacked by demonstrators, this small house has become a bizarre horror museum. For hidden in the basement are some of the torture chambers of the Shah's secret police, Savak. These metal grids were called the toaster because the victim who lay on them naked was subjected to intense heat from electric elements underneath.
One goes downstairs and one immediately has cold shivers go down one's spine. I mean, how would you feel? How would you feel if you were taken one cold winter night down there with no remorse, gagged, blindfolded and thrown into that dungeon that cannot even house a monkey, let alone a human being? You would have to stand up all night, you wouldn't be able to sleep, and you would be tortured with those inhuman pieces of equipment you've seen there. All sorts of gadgetry one cannot even describe. And you imagine people are living next door, totally oblivious. I mean, not oblivious, totally unaware of the fact that this hellish behavior is going on here. I mean, in the midst of this humanity, this inhumanity can happen, and this is what really makes my mind boggle. It is interesting that a lot of people have the opportunity to have a look at what was going on in this country so that they will not be ready, they will not be eager in any sense to have it replayed.
But with Ayatollah Khomeini's return, There are fears among at least some Iranians that the repression of the Shah may soon be replaced by the bigotry of the Muslim priests. As Ayatollah Beheshti halts a demonstration for noontime prayers, he shows just how unique the Iranian Revolution is. And churchmen like Beheshti are not afraid to display a certain hunger for power.
The leadership of the Islamic society, of an Islamic society, find themselves responsible for everything that may have an effect to on the development of the life in every aspect. In this way, we feel us responsible for politics, for economy, and for moral.
Can I ask you about the question of morality and the morality of the society? Ayatollah Khomeini said this week that progress did not mean going to films or going to parties. He said progress was something else. What does he mean by that?
They will go to the film, but which film? Sexual film? No. Natural film? Yes. Technical film? Yes. Amusement film? Yes. But sexual film? No. They will go to every good film, to a film which may help them to train themselves towards their good moral.
What about the role of women in the new society?
A woman must be at first a good mother, and after that, everything. But is she allowed to sacrifice, or one can sacrifice it, to sacrifice his position of a mother in the way of such thing? That we don't agree.
And already there are signs of how Khomeini's Islamic movement is seeking to exert its power. This demonstration at the Kayhan newspaper demanded that the staff print more Islamic news, and Raji Sangabadi becomes the center of a vigorous debate.
People consider themselves still cheated of that final victory that will enable them to say, okay, we've won. Now we want to sit down and go back to work and get down to earthly business. And that is, judging by the current zeal of the millions who take to the streets an Islamic Republic. I personally am opposed to the idea of religion becoming institutionally bound up with politics. I believe it is dangerous. This country reputedly has 80,000 mosques. And every single mosque apparently has at least one mullah in it. And you imagine if every single mullah is going to be given veto power over what goes on in his vicinity, there will be total chaos or ossification of the social system. As I said, I think the best thing to do, or the best thing to hope for, is to get out of this current, messy, bloody situation and have that breathing space to sit down and discuss the fundamental issues. How do we want to put together checks and balances that are necessary in a democratic society? I say that the final arbiter is the ballot box. And if the mullahs, if the Ayatollah Khomeini just now says that he does not believe in the ballot box, I, as a Shiite, will exercise my right to withdraw my confidence from him and from anybody else who says that.
But the fact that Iranians and Westerners now have to face is that Khomeini's Islamic movement has a stranglehold on the nation's one vital commodity, oil. Just outside Tehran, an oil refinery where the workers have taken over. Like the rest of their industry, they're producing just enough for domestic consumption and no more. As Raji Sangabadi found out, all key decisions are taken by a committee of Islamic activists.
So they decided to shut off completely in response to Imam Khomeini's call. They did so, and now they have completely taken over the refinery themselves. He says, on behalf of the whole nation. At the moment, they say not a single foreigner is working here. They're running the place entirely on their own. It's totally on the Iranian skill.
And do they all really believe this? They all want this state?
They don't seem to be afraid of anything. They don't seem to mind anything, being shot, being killed, being run over by tanks. Sometimes I tell myself, are they really Iranians? I mean, an Iranian is always portrayed as somebody who would wheel and deal and try to avoid climactic clashes. But these guys seem to be ready for anything and everything. I suppose Mr. George Habash of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine would feel quite jealous that suddenly in Iran we have got 35 million of these people on our hands.
But before Khomeini's dream of an Islamic state can be achieved, one major stumbling block will have to be overcome. At a barracks north of Tehran are 7,000 men of the Imperial Guard, who still every morning swear their oath of loyalty to the Shah. They and some other units make Khomeini's return an explosive event, and Hossein Amir-Sadihi relishes their loyalty.
They are the immortals. Mortals have a very long history, dating back more than 2,500 years. And these are representative of the might of the Iranian armed forces. And including that might, you have the power of the loyalty to the person of the Shah. You know, you can see it in the eyes of these people. And every one of them, there is absolutely no doubt, every one of them would be willing to sacrifice not themselves, but everything they stand for the man. If ever Khomeini decides to step outside the legal framework, these people will be the first to show him what the hell it means to be getting a whiff of grape shot.
This week, rumors are circulating in Tehran that the Imperial Guard are planning to murder Khomeini shortly after his return. It's claimed that one of their units has been specially trained to kill him. The Islamic movement has sworn to defend its leader and is issuing guns to its growing guerrilla army. With Khomeini back in Iran and still as determined as ever to complete his Islamic revolution, the riots and demonstrations could soon turn to war. Perhaps jihad, the holy war.
The people have prepared themselves since a long time for such a period, but we have stopped them because we hoped that the government, the regime, and its supporters, its foreign supporters, will be able to understand our position and will give way to the revolution to go towards its aim.
And you, as a church leader, are ready to see them go on with it, to start an armed struggle?
It is not under our will, but it is the teaching of Quran. The teaching of Quran says that when a peaceful struggle is not useful, then you must begin an armed struggle, jihad.
Away from the demonstrations, in his apartment near the palace, Hossein Amir-Sadihi thinks about the past. Years when the Shah represented stability and security for the people that surrounded him, and when the oil wealth of Iran produced a bonanza, at least for some.
I don't see any future for Iran. I see total anarchy, total chaos, total breakdown in society. The economy is in an absolute shambles, and it will never recover, because you will not have one penny of internal or external capital investment anymore in Iran. And it won't be only the Iranians who will suffer. We are great sufferers. We love to suffer, it seems. We create our own suffering. But the world, I believe the stability of the whole world is at stake here.
Most people are not so pessimistic. Tehran today was packed with Iranians who have committed themselves to Khomeini's banner. Only a few express any secret doubts about Khomeini and the religious revolution he has returned to lead in Iran.
I have my fears, but by the same token, I have my hopes, and my hopes are raised when I talk to the people on the streets. I talk to them, I say, well, if the clergy take over and the next day reintroduce their own system of savak and kill people in the name of the Allah, what will you do? And they say, we'll pick up arms. The same thing, the same revolution. And I have no doubt that what actuates people to action is not the mere religious frenzy being whipped up by the mullahs. In fact, they have started this revolution because the socio-economic system of the country became totally clogged with corruption, with police brutality, and with similar impediments to real progress, and the system was incapable of solving its own problems, the most fundamental problems it could not solve. We've got to get down to the nitty-gritty, to the very brass tacks, and any political leadership, be it inspired by the clergy, be it inspired by the people, I hope that is bound to come out of the ballot box, must take these tangible, real-life issues into consideration if it is going to survive. Otherwise, this will develop into a permanent revolution.